All right, welcome back to the SSL Family Dad channel. We are here in Michigan. Spring has finally set in, and that means the end of maple syrup season is upon us, I think. Looking forward to the temperatures. It's going to be in the 50s and 60s during the day for the foreseeable future, at least the next week. And nighttime temperatures are not going to drop below freezing, so we're looking in the upper 30s to lower 40s for nighttime temperatures, which means the sap is not going to run. It's pretty much done. What I have here beside me is the collection of the last week of sap boiled down to what I have here. This is about 50%, meaning that I need to boil this down to about half, and I'm going to end up with about 3 or 4 gallons of syrup when we're done with this. I set a very lofty goal of 2,000 gallons of sap. I wanted to over double what I did last year. I thought that would be feasible. I have more buckets and more taps in the field this year. I tapped more trees and really tapped early. I didn't miss any bit of sap this year. I got the very first run and all the way through the very last run. Maple syrup is very unpredictable. You never know what your season's going to look like. It's extremely dependent on the weather. For instance, last year we had a season that ran from almost February 15th or 16th, somewhere right around there, all the way until April 20th. I was still collecting. In fact, I think even later than that, I think April 20-something last year, I collected sap. And it was also a 2-month sap run that we had last year, off and on. Throughout that time, I collected about 800 gallons of sap. That was my collection for that period of time. It was very spread out, and it would run and it would stop and it would run and stop, but it was quite a productive and very long season last year. In comparison, this year, the first run this year was about February 23rd. It was real short, real small run, and then I had another real small run in February. But I really didn't start getting anything until March 8th is what I have recorded here. I keep track of every gallon I collect on every day, so I have a complete record of what days were productive. I can go back historically, look at the weather for those days and what was collected and all that kind of stuff, so I can help to determine what I'm going to get and what I'm expecting. And the last time I really had a good collection was about March 30th. And so we really had a season this year that was about a month long. So it was about half of the time that last year was. Now, so far, I have collected 900 gallons of sap. That's where I'm at right now. So I didn't make the 2,000 mark, but if I would have had a season like last year, I probably would have came pretty darn close. In this year, I've collected more sap in half of the time. Basically, I've collected 900 gallons in 4 weeks instead of last year 800 gallons in about 8 weeks. And so we've really upped production, that's for sure. And with a little bit of a longer season, I would have came close to that goal, but we didn't hit it. That's okay. I learned a lot this year, and we still expanded our operation. I put every tap and every bucket and every piece of tubing that I own in the field this year, and I still have a lot more trees to tap. And so next year we'll keep increasing and keep adding to that sap production. More buckets, more taps, more tubing, and with little investments, we'll be able to improve on production here. So, but with that being said, is it really worth it? What are the dollars and cents? Is it really worth it to, as a hobby, maple syrup producer, or even you want to get into it as a business like we're trying to do here? Is it really worth it? What are the investments that are needed? And what does that really translate into dollars and cents? So for us here, we have 150 taps out in the forest, out in the field. Some around our house, some out in the forest, and kind of spread out all over the place here. Though that represents a whole cross-section of different kinds of maple trees in different environments. Some are in sunny locations, some are in shady locations, some are silver maples, some are red. Some from the neighbor I get are sugar maples. All the different varying sugar contents in those different kinds of trees. They also produce varying amounts of sap. Depends on how well you tap the trees and all that kind of stuff. And so really, you're going to vary. The season, you're never going to know exactly how much sap you're going to get. 150 taps for us this year for a 4-week season will translate into probably about 18 gallons of syrup. I'm not finished yet, but that's what I'm looking at as an estimate, about 18 gallons of finished syrup. As far as investment costs go, I did have to buy tubing. I did have to buy all of those taps. There are some other things that I bought, hydrometers and stainless steel funnels and some filters and other things like that, real smaller costs, still things to consider. All of the collection buckets are free. They're either from a local bakery that we either do Myers here in Michigan, or other local bakeries I've gotten their frosting buckets from. They just give them to me, or they have been given to me by family and friends. And of course, once you collect the sap, you have to have something to put it in. I have an IBC tote, just 255 gallon IBC tote. Between the tote and the adapter that it took to the hose adapter on it, that was about $115 total. I got the tote off Craigslist and I got the adapter off of Amazon. And then of course, once you have it all collected and stored, you need to boil it or evaporate it down into something close to a concentrate or finished syrup, however you plan on doing it. I recommend building a big evaporator to boil off, 90% of your water out of your sap, and then take the rest in and finish it on a propane stove or inside in the house, which is what we do. So I did need to build an evaporator. Now, I was lucky enough to have a flat pan, a stainless steel flat pan donated to me, and I built a firebox out of cinder blocks. The cinder blocks cost me about $35, and that included a bag of cement to put it all together. It wasn't much, and some time to put it together. And I also, I did use some stovepipe and things that I had found around here, things like that. And so obviously you'd have to factor that into your cost buying stovepipe. If you're putting it in a building, if you're doing it outside, you just need maybe a small section. So you could add $30 or $40 onto that. But I trade off that very low and inexpensive investment. If you guys have followed the channel, you know that I don't like to spend a lot of money. I try to stay very tight. We're on an extremely tight budget here in this farm. We're just starting off, and so we can't just go throwing thousands of dollars at an operation to make it efficient. We have to start small, start cheap, and then slowly improve where we can improve and when we can improve. Take some of that money that we'll make and reinvest that, and then slowly in more taps and more things, so we can make more money, so we can buy better equipment, so we can make it more efficient, so we can have more taps, so you continually increase your business that way. I wouldn't say that you should, if you're looking to get into this and maybe you find you got to stand to 50 or 100 trees, don't go out and spend 10 grand on vacuum systems and lines and lateral lining and filters and reverse osmosis and evaporators and all this stuff, because it will take you a really long time to recoup that amount of money. So what does that mean? Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Well, for me, because I've invested very little, I have a profitable operation. Everything that I invest this year, I've literally spent almost no money this year. Everything I had was literally invested from last year and covered by last year's operation. So I didn't really expand much this year. I had a lot of extra taps from last year I didn't use, and a lot of extra tubing. I got a lot more free buckets and I expanded that way. But I really didn't invest too much money into this operation this year. So almost everything I have will be profit, short of the bottles that we need in the packaging and other consumable expenses like that to go into each bottle of syrup. But the trade-off, there's always a trade-off. The trade-off for me investing very little in this operation is that it takes me an enormous amount of time. All these inefficient processes that many of you have pointed out through watching me collect, collecting in the water and hauling, using my truck and hauling things back from the field and evaporating in this flat pan and doing all these things that take a really long time. I've ran this evaporator for 2 days to get this, to run through 200 gallons. It takes a long time, and I have to be home continuing to fill that evaporator every couple hours with wood, which means I also have to collect wood, which means that I also have to, split wood and stack wood and haul wood, and it's a lot of work and a lot of time. It takes me about 3 or 4 hours to collect, my 150 gallons of sap or whatever it is that I get in a good day. Then I have to boil it and all that stuff. So, and then once it's boiled, it's still not over. Then I have to take this inside and spend another few hours finishing it off on the stove, taking that time and finishing it off and testing it and filtering it again and bottling it. And then it's not over yet because we still have to sell it. And so there's a lot of time invested in this. If I were working a full-time job, there is no possible way that I could, without sacrificing my job in some way, there's no way that I could run even this size operation and really do it effectively. So it's an enormous amount of work and it's an enormous amount of time. Now, if you're a homesteader or farmer or you're trying to get started in those things, that's the trade-off that you have to make. You're not going to make a whole lot of money right off the bat, and you're going to have to invest a whole lot of time. That's just the way it is. In the end, is it worth it? Absolutely. We have a foundation for a maple syrup business that I think we can continue to expand each year here, and it has been profitable each year. Even with the initial investments last year, we were profitable. If we have 18 gallons of syrup, we're probably going to keep a couple gallons of that for ourselves and for maybe friends and family or things like that. So let's say we have let's just say 15 gallons this year that we'll be able to sell. You can average with your costs and everything like that you're gonna get about $100 per gallon. So that's $1,500 that we'll be able to make off of selling that that syrup. That's after our shipping costs and things like that. That's a rough estimate. Let's say between $1,300 and $1,500. Some of that money may be invested into a new evaporator next year. I may try to make a little bit of a leap forward next year, make an investment that's gonna set me back a little bit. New evaporator, right now I feel like that's my choke point. I have all this sap that I'm collecting, and a lot of times it took me days to get through the sap that I had collected, and sometimes there was more coming and I had a full tank and I had to wait until I boiled some down before I could get more in the tank and things. So that seems to be my bottleneck right now. So I can't really expand to more taps if I don't have anywhere to deal with the sap and I can't boil it quick enough. It does go bad. If you leave it out in the sun or if it's warm days, that sap can go bad. It also freezes in tanks and you have all kinds of trouble. So you boil it down as quickly as possible, the better off you are. So next year I may invest in an evaporator. That's gonna be a big one. That's gonna take me several years to pay that off. And so I've gotta make a huge commitment in a long run that I'm gonna have and get into this and stay in it. Because that's a big leap forward. Once I have a new evaporator, then I can expand and get more taps, and I can make that process more efficient. So hopefully that gives you a general idea with some numbers of what you're looking at if you are trying to get into this, trying to get into maple syrup. What can you do as a hobby? The smaller you are, if you make some real small investments in just some tubing and taps and maybe a 55-gallon drum and a small evaporator you can build yourself, you could be very profitable. You're not gonna make $100,000, but you might be able to make a few $100s a year, maybe $500 a year off your little maple syrup operation and keep it small. It'd be very profitable that way. As you make leaps into bigger, which is where we want to go, we would like for this to be one of those, bigger chunks of our income every year. If we could make maybe $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year, that would be great. And so we want to get there. And it's going to take leasing some property, probably finding more maple trees, transporting and getting a bigger operation. That's where we want to go. And the bigger you are, the bigger investments are, but the bigger the return is. And of course, the bigger the risk is. And so those are all things you have to keep in mind. But hopefully this gave you some ideas. Please throw your questions down below. What questions do you have? What did I miss? What didn't I cover? If you're a maple syrup producer out there and you've done this for much longer than I have, I'm pretty amateur. What are your thoughts? What are some investments that are good to make first? What are some tricks and tips? And what are some pitfalls to stay out of? What are some things not to do? I would say my biggest bit of advice is don't go throw a ton of money at something, especially like this, right up front. Do it slowly over years and keep your eyes out for used equipment, because buying stuff new is not always the way to go when you're getting started. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Don't forget to hit thumbs up on the video. Just reach down and tap thumbs up, and subscribe if this is your first time to the channel. Lots of maple syrup stuff and other farming businessy type things going on around here. And so I look forward to taking you guys along for all of that. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.